Thank you guys for everyone that's tuned in. I'm sure others will come in as well, because you do not want to miss the energy and optimism you're going to hear from this panel today on how to scale your team to reach 9-figure sales and volume success, which Heather's certainly doing it more. We're going to talk a little bit about it, but Teamerage, and James is doing it and running a team, and then Jason's going to talk about the whole picture and thanking him for the sponsor. So first, I want to introduce myself, Craig Northrup. I've been running a successful team for about was 17 years before I turned into a brokerage called a Teamerage, I guess, too, and we'll talk a little more about what that means. But ultimately became #1 team in the nation 3 times, got up to about 120 member team. Found that their growth was needed to kind of move to their own teams. We went to a brokerage model and had 40 teams, so 40 different team leaders and 300 individual agents. So excited about that, excited to be able to talk about this topic, excited about who we got on panelists. I'm going to start with Heather. Heather and I had a great pleasure. How are you, Heather?
Good, thanks.
We had a great pleasure at RISMedia kind of talking about it. I saw that energy. I'm like, oh man, wait, we haven't done it together. So that energy together, you kind of owned the other panel you were on, and I moderated a different one, but together today we're here together. Talk to us, Heather, first. Give them a little bit of your role, your team, Teamerage, what is it? And then sort of what is it made up of? And then let's dive into a little bit of your role in that Teamerage.
Sure. So I am a part of BF Realty. We are a boutique brokerage in Loveland, Ohio, which is right outside of Cincinnati. We have been a brokerage for only 3 years. I've only been in real estate for about 3 years, but we are called a Teamerage. At BF Realty, we don't necessarily have teams. There's nobody under me. I do not have a team. It is Heather. And that's kind of what makes us special, is like when you hire each agent, you actually get us. We don't necessarily refer you out to somebody else on the team, so they know what they're getting when they commit to me as an agent.
So I think that's the new traditional models that you're kind of seeing with the brokerages trying to keeping team friendly and stuff like that. So I think that's dynamite, Heather. We're going to come back to some questions to that. But I want to introduce James. James, how are you?
Hey, thanks, Craig, for arranging this. This is great. Just in our talks of the day, I learned a lot. So looking forward to this call.
Yes, and James, so tell us, you lead a very successful team. Ultimately started your own brokerage as well. Let's talk through that a little bit, your venture and where you are.
Sure. Just started as an individual agent, built it up, and starting at about 6 years ago, started to add the first position, a transaction coordinator, then a buyer's agent, and have grown it to where we're about at 16 agents doing over 300 transactions a year. At the peak, we're doing 3 million. It probably won't be quite that much, unfortunately, but still very active, by developing the team and not just relying on transactions.
Excellent. And when did you officially start your team? Let's talk about it. When was that timeline?
Well, in 2018, I was the #1 individual selling agent in the state of Arizona, and that was only because Jason had just left the business the year before that. So, but and I just saw at the time where I was so busy impacting my personal life, social life, and really you're limited to the amount of transactions one can do. So your only choice is to push sales price up, and you can't always control that, right? People buy what they can afford. You can't say no if someone wants a $800,000 deal and say I only will work $2 million. So you do have to work most all deals. So to optimize my team, I started to bring on agents to work at the lower price deals. But I really hit a wall until I was willing to, for the most part, step aside from the business, except for really that top tier.
But one of the things I want to do there, James, that was a good perspective. We're going to come back to you. I'm not cutting you off. I really want to talk more about sort of what was that parameter, what did it look like, how you kind of got started. That's really what I think a lot of these viewers are going to want to hear a little bit. So I'm going to stop you there for a minute.
It's been about 5 years since I've been fully running a team and growing a team. And I still do business, but I'm trying to grow the team more than do business myself.
Good. And we'll come back to that in a minute. Also, again, I want to talk about where you were in volume and stuff. We'll come back to that in a sec. Jason, I want to introduce Jason. Here, Jason, I heard you left. He became #1. That was great. Nice compliment James just gave you. And you're the sponsor here today. So just want to say welcome. And then I know you're going to tell us a little bit about the company and what you do for other Teamerage, brokerages, all of that.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. And Wex is the most humble, modest person out there. I can tell you, when you're top 5 agent for a decade in a row, you're doing something right. So he also happens to be my best friend. So I appreciate everyone's time. And you know, my journey is different in the sense of we grew a brokerage on the philosophy of a team. So my brokerage, JMG, we have about 900 at the brokerage, and we have about 750 what we call team members, which simply means they receive referrals. And so we are in, how many states are we in? 39, 40? 40 states. But what makes our brokerage unique and why our agents love working here and our team leaders is we provide a lot of opportunity when it comes to value. We'll distribute close to 100,000 referrals this year from partners like Rocket Mortgage and Veterans United, Freedom Mortgage, you name it, we have a ton of them. So we manage distribution of around 60 billion a year in referrals. And what that leads to for our company is around 11,000 transactions for about $5.5 billion a year. #1 real estate team in the country on that 750 agent. But it's a very unique value proposition. And that's what I think we should talk about today. Most importantly is being a team leader is one thing, but adding value is another. Just because you become successful in the field doesn't mean you should start a team. And just because you're wanting to grow, you have to make sure you're positioning the value proposition so somebody wants to work for you and with you as a partner. And so we're really just a big scale team across the country that specializes more B2B than anything. About 90% of our business comes from our referral partners.
I think that's fantastic and plays right into where I was going, Jason. I'll certainly come back to you at the end to kind of talk about sort of, you know, what parts you help play other brokerages and teams throughout the nation. James, he brought up a very good question. I'm going to dive right to you, James, on this, is value prop, right? We all talk about, obviously, the new buyer agency laws, all of that. Obviously, you got to have value props. I call it a rainmaker, right? So, James, in order to be a really good, and you've been in 5 years, I've been doing it, well, let's see, 18 years, and now I'm a broker, but I was a team leader for 18 years. You had to be a rainmaker. So let's talk through that first, James, of being a rainmaker. What are you doing to make it rain? Because I'm sure, as most team leaders, I always say you're either team leader by name or by nature. They're just a name. Hey, I'm going to be a team leader. Great. They're not providing value. They're just saying you're on the team. But then there's that nature, that sort of leadership, lead by example, players coach that gives value. I know you still sell. You mentioned that. You know, how are you giving value to your team that they want to work for you? I think Jason brought that question up. I want to kind of live there because I think that's a great question.
Sure. Well, leads are what most agents need. I mean, that's really what we all need. However, Jason and I discussed this, when an agent comes in for an interview, if the first thing they say is, what about leads? What about leads? We almost dismiss that. We want someone who's coachable, trainable, works in a team manner, has a unified vision, right? Can survive if leads are down. So you're not always spending your time onboarding training, but you also do need to provide leads, technology, software. So you really, when the agent comes on, they're getting brand, access to management, training, systems, and leads, and the ability to survive on their own. So the recruiting process and onboarding, you know, being short, long to hire, short to fire, you know, things of those natures, they all really add up. But, you know, at our brokerage, we have technology, leads, access to management. Once a month, there's a high-end level coaching call once a week. Jason does a rapid fire with questions. There's broker breakfast. You know, when you're creating an environment where someone isn't out on an island on their own, like most agents, and they wake up and say, what do I need to do today to make a living? That's where people struggle. Most people think they're cut out for this business. They're not. And because they're not able to self-start and do the things that the people on this call and the team leaders were able to do on their own. So you have to really create that environment so that they can just go out and execute business, not wonder what to do each day.
I like it. Your point about hire slow and fire fast, right? That's really what you come into. What do you look for in a team member, James, right now? So I come to you, I want to work on your team. What are you looking for? And then it'll play right into what Heather does. Give me a little sense of that. What are you looking for in the qualities for your team?
Yeah, the last few months, really, since that announcement of switching to the compensation on the buyer side, and it's been in place since August 1st. The last few months, I've never interviewed so much because agents are struggling from a business that it's become that wasn't what it was when they got into it. And if the first question becomes, how do I get leads? What about leads? What about splits? How, this other brokerage said it's 90-10. Why are you 85-15 on self-gen? When they start talking about that, I know they're not the right person. I want someone who says, here's what I'm going to do on a daily basis. I would love leads. How can I earn more leads? What does that look like? What do I need to do on a daily basis? What do I need to do to perform and show you that I deserve the leads to be taken away from the people who've already been proving it on my team or on Jason's team or any other's team?
A little, it's interesting. When I was a team, I got a lot of team members from the fact that team leaders overpromise and underdeliver. Without a doubt, they sell you the moon. Promising amount of leads is the most craziest thing I've ever seen anybody do. I think it's the most dangerous piece of a team leader that can make you fail right out of the chute, right? You might show it and share it like a bonus, but you might share it like you can live on it, because the people that live on it aren't going to grow on it. You got to teach them how to hunt. Your
Well,
goal
that's
is
really what the conversation becomes. When I interview them, every salesperson or every team leader is a salesperson, and they wouldn't be interviewing if there wasn't a need, right? So they're trying to encourage you to work there, and it's like two drunk people at a bar, and you're there for a job. It's a bad mix.
I like that. So let's talk. So Heather said something I really loved and has resonated with me ever since. She says, I'm loyal to where I started. Where I started, I'm loyal to. And I love that because, first of all, Heather, 3 years, you've done how much volume already?
I'm working towards 40 million this year, but in 3 years, I've sold 80 million.
$80 million. There's a team member that we all want. So let's talk from your perspective. Like, what have you seen that your broker has done as a teamerage, and what you like and what you could see in the future of? We'd love to hear from you.
Right. So I look at James and Jason, I think, wow, they're like, whoa. So hopefully I can relate to the people that may be just getting started in their career or not quite to those numbers yet, and just encourage them. But I'd never been in real estate. I've been in sales for 26 years. So I knew how to sell, but I didn't know anything about real estate. But I was loyal to the one that I started with because I knew her as a person before this. And I thought, whatever she's going to do, I know it's going to be successful. We have a joke, if she was selling organic hot dogs, I'd probably switch to that. So my love is necessarily not for houses and homes and real estate, but it really is for her and where her ambition is and where I know she's going to want to go. But what I appreciate about BF Realty and Brittany as my broker, we don't necessarily get leads from Brittany. I've done about 210 transactions, and I think I've gotten 4 leads. So what Brittany does, and there's only about 15, 17 agents in our brokerage, but what she does is kind of that teach you how to fish model. We're in the middle of an 8-week boot camp. She's got 4 events per year, like big ones for the community that she pays for that we can bring our clients to. So we're not necessarily funding those ourselves. And as the team grows, this probably won't be like even able to do, but she does meet monthly and has accountability sessions with each of us. So I feel like there are things about a giant operation, and right now we're still pretty small. We might do 100 million, but that's in the top 10 in Cincinnati. So maybe it's not as expensive to live here in the Midwest. But what she does is really builds into us individually and then gives us opportunities to tap into, which is why I think that nobody on our team would ever even consider leaving. So it isn't leads based at all. It's more the value in the other things and the time she spends pouring into you.
And listen, accountability is love, is what I say, right? The more accountability you're able to give, and the people feel like a family, which is also important, and they're vested. She's vested in what she does with you and all of that. Obviously, your energy, your enthusiasm, and your talk towards the company gleams out, which is what we all want to do. I think the thing that we can take away from you and your brokerage is create things that can make you still allow you to grow, because if you're not growing, right, then it's a problem, right? And it doesn't have to be leads. It could be systems. It could be training. It could be, I always call it my 5 pillars. You need somebody to help the assistants, the transaction coordinators. You need a good marketing coordinators. You've got to have, good agents, of course. And then you've got to have training, and then you have to have a portal for leads. You can't abandon leads. I agree with leveraging too much of the leads is what makes people kind of run astray. And I found that when agents come from a full lead brokerage, then they're like, they don't know what to do. right? When they are getting the feed the leads, it's like, well, then you already spoil them, very hard to get them back. And, you know, and again, it's tough because in our business, we want to grow it. Now, Heather, you've grown to where I would consider a team leader status, right? In my mind, you're there. You have any interest in the future of thinking of running a team?
I think that would be a great fit in sounding this out and what would make an ideal team leader. You have to have enough personal volume yourself to be able to give maybe those lower hanging fruit opportunities or those slam dunks to maybe a newer agent that you trust. But I would think that after maybe 3 years and maybe $10–15 million consistently, if not double that, would be a great place to start to even think about being a team leader. I was talking this when we were doing our practice call. I said, Jason, what about like ego in this, right? Like I want the recognition. He said, Heather, it's not so much about ego, it's about control. And I think as agents grow into a team leader position, don't necessarily look at it as, you know, you're shining light on somebody else, but like really releasing the control to feel like it has to be done your way. And Craig, you said, if you can trust somebody 70% with a transaction or a client, hand them over so you can spend more time on maybe higher dollar sales or refilling the pipeline.
Right, absolutely. And I think to your point, first of all, in Maryland, all the laws have, since we were the first team to come out of it, the laws have kind of morphed around what we did. 3 years, you got to have 3 years experience, period. So I agree with 3 years. I mean, I think 3 years before you start leading others, you got to lead yourself first. And then second is 10 million minimum. 10 million minimum. Like starting a team when you have $2 million, who's going to follow that? I mean, you got to always be ahead of that team. My philosophy is you got to be ahead of that team because what are they there for? And you got to be able to lead them to the next level. So that's my thoughts. And James, I would echo to a little bit what Heather just said.
Well, the hard part is getting out of the business and relinquishing not only control, relinquishing your clients, but it's also a lot of money, right? $1 million lead and saying I'm giving up 50%, 60%, whatever it might be. It's very hard to do that. Most great team leaders struggled with that. But the sooner you can step out, only work at the high level business, spend some time, you know, initially until you have an HR person or a team like Jason, you know, interviewing, onboarding, managing, training, all those things take a lot of time. And more times than not, at least when you first start this, because you're eager to do it because you want to get back to your business, you're not necessarily always hiring the right people. It's the short to hire, long to fire, because you're eager to get someone. So the sooner you can start taking more time on that, investing in it, like Heather said, those people won't leave because you're teaching them how to hunt, you're giving them infrastructure, and you're sprinkling in other business they wouldn't have. There isn't a better opportunity out there. At our brokerage, we probably have the lowest turnover of any brokerage in the United States. I would argue. I don't measure them all because there's nowhere else they can go. There's better splits. There might be some a little bit more leads, but you don't get coaching, training, collaboration, office space, technology, leads, you know, coaching calls that people pay $1,000 an hour to once a month. The Tom Ferry's, the great leaders in this industry, all of that collectively, and even access to Jason, whether it's on a call like this or his once a week rapid fire. If you provide that, there's nowhere better to go. If you don't provide most of those things, and not all of them, there's always going to be, when they struggle, and we're in a very up and down business, when people struggle, they're going to think the grass is always greener. And they're going to walk into an interview and there's going to be some desperate team leader, Craig, we know this, who's going to paint this rosy picture. Right. It's going to sound better until they get in and realize it's not. You want them to not even want to interview. Our agents don't even look elsewhere. They either leave the business or they stay here because there's nothing else you can provide. But a lot of that things provided comes on the team leader initially until you get 15, 20 agents, because you just can't afford to have someone who's.
Yeah, you got to build foundations like a great house. You got to do that. And to your point, you know, is if indeed anybody ever left my team, 80% of them came back unless they moved out of the area. It is that way. I think the broker and the team leader of the future is got to provide more value, period, right? Because ultimately, why not go to 100% models if you don't create value, right? I mean, that's really the challenge you're going to get into in the future. But again, both your brokerage and in Heather's brokerage, they're giving value. They're giving some piece of why you need to be there. And I think it's so instrumental. I mean, I talk about, in building teams, you have to have growth, grit, and gratitude, right? You gotta have a place where they can grow. You gotta keep them disciplined and work. And I tell you that the best team leaders I've known out there, I used to discipline my agents. They were, when we went through the recession in 2008, I had them at 8 a.m. on Saturday mornings, literally there, all of them there on time and getting ready for the day, because we wanted more than anyone else. And we got it through the recession. But it takes that discipline. And I think one of the things I've also seen, James, I'll stay with you and then we'll come back to Heather, is I've seen a little fear of team leaders so worried about losing the agent that they're, that they're basically not disciplining the agent or helping grow the agent because there's such fear of losing them. And I think I'd love you to talk to that about, is there a fear in the fact that I know you offer more than anyone else, which is exactly what you should do, but ultimately, do you see that in maybe other team leaders, or have you ever had fear that you lose somebody, and then in versus really kind of discipline them to be on time, do your coaching calls? Because if they don't participate as a team member, why are they there?
Right. Well, it is a fear, probably till you're at an inflection point where, cleaning house is better. When you're initially started, you probably need the business. You have the business. If you only have 5 or 6 agents, losing one is like 20% of your sales force. You also know them well personally, right? You've brought them into the business. You made them promises. They have a selective memory of all these guarantees you make. You watch them succeed. You see potential. So like a kid, you feel like it's hard to discipline and hard to being short to fire, but you do learn over time. So when, as team leaders out there, we're growing, or at Heather's level or my level where you're still growing, it's okay to have that fear. Know that that's natural, but the sooner you can realize that you're investing all this time, which is our most valuable asset. If you're on this call and you're growing a team, it's probably because you're so busy. If you're not so busy, you shouldn't probably be thinking about a team. And but your time is the most valuable asset. And the sooner you can not invest time into things that aren't going to be valuable to them as much as you, right? If they're not doing it on their own, they're not going to be successful. Let them find out. There's no shame in not being a superstar realtor if that's not what your path is in life. So let's both find that out sooner than later. But it is hard. It drags on longer than it is. It's something I struggle with. But yes, don't invest your time if you don't see it. And they shouldn't be wasting 6, 9 months, a year to their life drowning and treading water if this isn't the career for them. Get in at 8 a.m., do open houses every day, knock on doors, whatever your networking, your lead generation model is for your business, and find out quickly, can I make this my career or not? Don't just let it go by and say 2 years later, I could have found this out a year and a half ago.
So James, with that, I say time and energy is worth more than money, which is, I totally agree with that. So with that, do you have a requirement of experience level that you hire or not? I mean, I found that when I was running a team, I had to have 2 years experience because I didn't really want to teach them all the basics. I didn't have the training mechanism. As a broker, I have it. As a team leader, I did it. Do you have a requirement of that, James?
2 years, a certain amount of transaction, because I don't want to teach them the nuances of how to function or work as a realtor. I want to improve their sales ability, their time management, their discipline, their self-accountability, and structure so that they can thrive. But you also typically don't find successful people who've been doing it at a higher level because they're smarter than you are. They know everything, right? Very hard to take someone who's been doing it modestly successfully on their own, because again, putting in those controls that you require as a team leader make it difficult for someone who has been their own boss for that long, who's had success. That's a really hard person to find. Someone like Heather would be a dream, but the reason she's on this call is because they're 1 in a million, not I can go set out a Craigslist ad or an Indeed ad and get resumes, and people like Heather pop across my desk, right?
Well, Heather, you are. Let's dive right into Heather. It's a great way to say that. Listen, energy and optimism is certainly what we pay for in E&O insurance. And the reason I bring that up is you've got it. How do you keep it? And why the brokerage when you first started? Because you're a great example of what all all teams, whether teamerage, brokerage, whatever, want somebody like you to grow through it. Like, what made you choose it, and what environment has kept you in the sense of energy and that energy level you always have?
Right. I joke, I think I'm the peppiest, perkiest person that I know, which is probably infinitely annoying to a lot of people. But I grew up in the military family, so I've moved every 2 years of my life. So I had to learn how to meet people out of nothing. So I've been the rookie of the year. I was the Midwest rookie of the year last year for the Midwest for RISMedia. And I've been the rookie of the year in other sales jobs that I have. So it's kind of rare that you find someone like me. Like, there's a lot of good salespeople, but I'm really not afraid of anything. I can meet friends like outside right now if I wanted to. But what I found in real estate is you're selling them oftentimes way more than the house. And we joke, this is in fact very rarely about the house. So what I think I'm good at is getting into someone's brain and being a part of their journey, whether that's helping somebody who's coming on the other side of a divorce have the confidence to go out on her own, whether that's somebody relocating here. But it's really like anyone can sell them the house. So I think they've got to understand, why do they want to work with you? And I think it's because I get to be very close to them very quickly, because that's what I did to survive growing up. I also think that I say we never start as friends, but we always end as friends. And that could just be Midwest corny culture, you know, but like I do client appreciation events twice a year. Anyone that bought or sold with me last year, I took them to a pedicure thing, and we had like 75 pedicures lined up. Like, that's goofy, right? But they were excited to get there. I opened like a little boutique wine thing, and everybody could come with their spouse, and it was just a night to appreciate them. So I feel like I create FOMO. Everybody kind of wants to be a part of what Heather's doing. And that is just making them feel like they're belonging, right? They just want to belong to something. Like for instance, tomorrow I'm surprising a teacher in our local community. I had a clear the cart contest, and like you had to like my page and say something about BF Realty and wear a t-shirt and take a selfie in it. And then you had to vote for a teacher that you thought was doing an amazing job. And that got leads to my site, right? Like that captured like 400 people. But then tomorrow I'm going to this elementary school and showing up with balloons and $1,000 Amazon gift card, right? And the principal's going to be there. So it's like, these are all little tiny things that I do over and over and over, which is why I think a gift card to a teacher has nothing to do with houses. But I think it makes you think, I want to work with that girl because she does great things for the community. So that's sort of my brand, and that's sort of what I'm known for. And that's what we do a lot at BF Realty. It's very grassroots. Brittany teaches us to bloom where we're planted and bless the local community around us. So if your kid's in lacrosse, then you're going to buy all the kids on lacrosse, you know, BF Realty shirts. At the end of the school year, I rent out the local roller rink and I have everybody out to roller skate, right? Like, it rarely has anything to do with real estate, but you're likable and you're relatable and you're involved in the community and you do good things for the community. And I think that's what our brokerage is known for. I think that's why people are attracted to us.
I love that, and bloom where you're planted. I mean, I love that statement. I think also fall in love with your clients. I've always done that in my whole career. And I think a lot of my clients have become best friends. I mean, they really have. And it's great because I just, right before this webinar, I just went and met one of my clients and called me up and said, Craig, just write this house. I mean, they trust you. It's a relationship. It's simple. It really is simple. The more relationship you can make in this business, the longer you're going to have a career, and the longer it's going to be, it'll start working for you, right? I mean, that's really what I find, and it works the same way with team members. I mean, you know, fall in love with them, like be part of it. I mean, that's what's so fun about your brokerage there with BF is you guys have fun. It's fun. You make real estate fun. It's a great environment. You're doing stuff with the community, which is great. And I think that energy is contagious. End of story. You cannot be around you, Heather, not have some gin up energy. It doesn't work. So I think that's a great point. I think when we talk about, you know, when you're trying to talk about building teams, you know, Zig says it best. You can have everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And it's truly our philosophy as a brokerage and watching teams grow. James, so how much volume were you doing before you really started a team? I get why you wanted to start a team, because again, you want to get some time and energy back, and you can delegate 70%. If somebody can do it 70% of the time, 70% as good as you can, you delegate it. And that's what makes good team leader, James. And so that pivotal point, what kind of volume were you doing right when you decided to be a team leader?
You know, I looked at it more like transactions. Jason and I discussed it. It's always about
That's
transactions.
fine.
You're building a sales force out there, like Heathers, who are bragging about you, loving on you, can tell their friends about you. We were fortunate in Scottsdale, where, you know, the average transaction, at least at the time, was about 800,000. Now our average price point's over $1 million. So I did $83 million individually in 2018. Was the #1 agent at that time. But it was more about the transactions. How do you manage 100 transactions, you know, 8 a month with a few listings and other buyers who aren't buying with you that you're driving around in those days still in your car with you and doing paperwork. So transaction coordinator, showing assistant, you start getting listings and they want you to be at some open houses and you can't show buyers, then bringing on a good buyer's agent, having them to work the lesser price leads, you know, relinquishing leads above $1 million is really tough. I mean, I think everybody always struggles with that. You're like, you know, I could go show that house and they might buy it right on the spot. Do I want to send someone over there and they buy it and make $15,000 when I could have driven there? So you fight with that. But the best team leaders are the ones who ultimately get completely out of the business, because the added value, the attention you can give those agents, the enthusiasm of sport, the role model, the branding, help with their marketing, discipline, going over their numbers each week at these meetings you're talking about, where they're failing, where they're succeeding. It's the only way ultimately to grow to a level where you're running a business and the business isn't running you. But it's transactions. If you're doing, I don't know, Jason, what would you see, 5 or 6 a month and have a few listings? It's probably time to start growing, because that's a full-time job.
And like the reality is, it comes with, like, there's growing a team and then operating a team. But the growth side is when you're busy enough to where you can add that value to another agent when it comes to being more transactional. And that's the part where you gotta, you know, once you decide I'm gonna build a team, I'm gonna add an agent, and I'm gonna add 2 agents, you gotta put them first. And you have to be able to give them opportunity to succeed. And if you do that, they'll be loyal to you. But it starts with you. So like if I'm Heather, and this is where it all begins. It all begins with you and what you need, and that is, you got to go get more business. You'll always get stuck at a certain point that you can't break through because you don't have help. I mean, James has help. He has a couple assistants that help him. So you need admin, and then you need agents, and it typically starts with the admin, because the admin allows you to go get more business. So you're not sitting there ordering your for sale sign, listing your properties, ordering the inspection, attending, you know, like an admin needs to do the busy work. When you, like, I get asked a lot, what's the best money you can spend when you're starting out to want to grow and you're doing a certain level of production? The best money spent is a human being, because that human being can do so much for you to free up your time to go get more business. And then there's the agent side. So there's the admin side to do the busy work. There's the agent side when you need to have somebody that starts running buyers, because you can't put, this is really important. And in fact, I think Aaron's gonna put a free audio of our book, but my book that I wrote, which was really cool, it became a #1 seller on the Wall Street Journal. It's all about growth and scale through different levels. We're gonna give that away for free today, but the point is, you can't mix admin and field. You can't have somebody come to the office and then expect them to go attend a walkthrough. You can't have somebody come in the office and work on paperwork and expect them to go put your lock, like, an agent cannot be an admin and an admin cannot be an agent. Now, an agent can be a co-list and a buyer and a buyer's agent. They can do both of those, but you can't have somebody that's supposed to be helping you with the busy work and rely on them to do field work. They don't mix. And the characteristics of that person are totally different that you should be hiring for anyway. When you're hiring admin, you need to be hiring organization, accountability, be on time to work, and learn how to, and you start with the admin when you start with these certain checklists. The checklists are what you need them to do, meaning what's gonna free up the most of your time. So for example, if I go get a new listing and I bring it to the office, you're responsible for ordering the photos and tours. You're responsible for pre-listing the property. You're responsible for doing this, this, and this. When I put a deal in escrow, you're responsible for doing this, 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 and this. And in the meantime, I need you to be calling either past clients. I need you to be helping me with putting daily some social media stuff out there. Before you interview somebody, identify what you want them to do. And then when you're interviewing them, you can see if their traits match up to what the job is, and don't hire the first person. A lot of people make a mistake. They talk to one person who wants to get hired, and 6 months down the road, they've wasted so much time and effort and energy for a person that they shouldn't have hired in the first place. And so hiring that right admin allows you to say, okay, the first 60 days, I'm going to have you responsible for these 3 things. As they get really good at those 3 things, we're going to add a 4th thing. As they get good at that 4th thing, now we're in day 91, we're going to add a 5th thing. So let them master what you need them to master first, and then you can layer on additional roles and responsibilities as they start to get better at what they do. From an agent's perspective, it's everything in this business, and Craig, you've grown an extremely successful brokerage that a lot of people will never get to that level. But what we need to understand is, in order to do that, the only word that matters is leverage. The only way you get to $1 billion, the only way you get to 250 million, the only way you get to 100 million is you have to create leverage. You have to be the sole responsibility of driving in more business, whatever that means. The army of agents are the ones that you create leverage with, who are also appreciative of the opportunities that come with being part of your organization. And then there's 2 sides to that, and I'll stop talking because I'm talking too much, but there's 2 sides to that. There's resources. Resources consist of things such as technology, marketing, training, coaching. Those are resources that you have as a team leader, or what a lot of team leaders, and why we have such a great broker model for team leaders, is we allow our team leaders to just plug into what we already have because we're just a big team. But now they don't have to build that stuff. They don't have to pay for that stuff. They don't have to build that stuff. But the ante to play nowadays is you got to have great resources. The added value proposition, for example, is the business. So if you come on board to my team, and I'm not saying JMG, I'm saying if I'm a team leader, what is your value proposition? Now what happens is, as you start to build that value prop as you get started, when you're doing 30 million, then 50 million, then 75 million, what you find is you start making investments in added value. And those work both ways. Added value by additional business opportunities, which is bringing in more business to the agent, and then added value to the resources side of things, which gives agents more tools to become successful. So you're always working on both, but everything starts with revenue. It always starts with sales, because if there's no sales, there's no money to invest in resources.
Now my question
that's
would be with what you're saying, Jason, I call it the IBM approach to real estate. I totally agree with what you're saying, right? Do you have a name for that, the resources? Do you create a name for that, or is it just resources?
Yeah, for us, we call it the JMG core. So the JMG core consists of whether you're an agent that receives referrals on the referral team, or you're a team leader with all these agents, or you're just an individual agent that doesn't get referrals and you have a higher split, everyone gets core. Everybody. If you're an agent at JMG, you get core. Core represents all of the tools and resources that we have as an organization. And the good thing is, for team leaders like James, he doesn't have to build anything. He just plugs his team into our team, and they get access to everything they need, all the marketing components, from social media to digital to all that stuff. Coaching and collaboration, 12 coaching calls a month with some of the best. Tom Ferry, myself, James, Jen Bear, like Tony Giordano, all these great team leaders that are educating our agents. Our library booklet of hundreds and hundreds of hours of content to dive into. And then you have technology. Well, real quick, but technology is so important in terms of reporting. There's so many people that fly blind. In fact, when James came over, he had all his escrows on a whiteboard, and I walk in his office, there's like 30 of them. I'm like, dude, how do you track this? And the reality is that reporting becomes critical, because you need to know where you stand. And if you're a team leader, most importantly, you need to know how your agent's actual KPIs and performances, because you can't keep giving referral and opportunity to agents that simply can't close them. that's opportunity lost. And so reporting is a very, very big component to running a successful team.
So let's recap what Jason's saying. Yes, you need to have some systems, some built-in stuff. I call it a plug-and-play system, same way as Jason talks about it, in different scales, right? You certainly got it on the very large scale. I think BF has got it on a smaller scale, as we're kind of in the mid-range. I think James has also got it in a scale because he's plugged in to Jason. So it kind of like, hey, if you either build it, it's expensive. And Jason knows it's expensive. People are definitely the difference. I call it the Ritz real estate. You got it. The Ritz-Carlton invest in people. That's what they make. Their motto is, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. It's the same philosophy. So yes, I think you got to build that foundation. You got to have the resources. You got to build a brand though. You got to either help them build a brand or have your brand strong enough that the brand helps them. Like I think there is that side of it that I think brand is why another piece that I would add to that piece of puzzle. I mean, so James, coming back to that real quick, when you hired your first agent, was it a buyer agent, seller agent, or what was it?
It was a licensed, I call it a showing assistant. I gave some salary, just a little bit of an override. They were able to help me when I couldn't be at two places once, showing lower price houses, even do open houses. They needed some salary. They were a licensed agent, new in the business, hadn't learned, so there was some additional value to them. So it wasn't an independent agent. So I went from admin, a transaction coordinator admin, to a showing assistant. Again, a licensed buyer's rep, but someone new in the business who couldn't afford to be on full commission, really valued not only the pay, but the ability to learn and grow, and then flourished into more of a buyer's agent, and then a sole agent, and then kind of kept replicating that until they were ready to become agents.
Right. So did you restrict them from being a seller's agent? Let's just say you're a real full-time buyer agent. You hired them. Do they just be a buyer agent, or you allow them to do both services, seller and buyer?
If they could get listings, which was rare when you're new in the business, it's so competitive, you don't have a track record. If they did, and it did happen, I would go on the listing appointment with them. They would take the lead on it. I would imply to the client that, hey, we were going to partner on this. We always work as a team, uplifted their level, but my credibility, my marketing material, my past success to retain the listing. But no, then they ran with it.
So great point people need to take away. He went on the appointments with the agent. Listen, players coach, I believe, is also the future of great team leaders / brokerages, right? I think there's a piece. There's other models that say, team leader, get your team and get out. Like I disagree with that model. I'm much more of a hands-on, know that. So I feel that. And then with Heather, delegating this stuff. I mean, you've got the resources, stuff like that. How are you managing $30 or $40 million? And it's because your team is a teamerage and they're all helping, and they're helping on like a partnership type of thing or accountability partner. How are you able to delegate in your brokerage to help you?
So I have I have my little people that almost have nothing to do with real estate. So we obviously have a transaction coordinator, but I'm paying her, right? She isn't just given to us. So if we need to use her services, you're going to pay her per transaction. We do have an office admin that does all of our like CRM stuff and enter our listings. And then I have a social media person who is in charge of making reels and knows what times to post what. So I make the content for her, but I pay her to like post it and make it all perfect. She's younger than I am and she's real savvy with this stuff, and then makes it look different across different platforms. And then I'm married to a husband, but I have a wife. Like, she runs my house, right? So it's like, I haven't graduated to what James is saying, a licensed showing assistant. Like, I'm taking notes. Like, I hope that people listening, like, if you're like me and you're right on the cusp of wanting something, like, I'm even on this panel taking notes, listening to these people, right? Like, I want to do what James said, like a licensed showing assistant. That's brilliant, right? Like, because I can't be in 48 places at once. And it's, quite frankly, like, I do listings and like I have both, right? I would say I'm 70% listing, 30% buyers, but it's sometimes really exhausting and annoying on a Saturday when my kids are doing their sports. I'm driving around this, family for 100 million hours. Like, that is fatiguing to an agent. And then they've decided to rent. Well, oh my God, like, drive me over in the road. So I think you've got to like get to the point where you're like, okay, I actually like Heather talking, like I know for sure I need what James just said. Like, I think two people that are listening to this, like take one little nugget away, right? Like, don't listen to this and be like, oh my Lord, I am a horrible agent, right? Like, how am I ever going to get to be James or Jason? But just take one little nugget, right? Like something that we've said can resonate with you just to implement one change. But I think you've got to figure out like, where do you want to go with this? Like James was saying, like, not everyone's going to be a rock star agent. Like, quite frankly, in this new model, there are going to be people that realize this isn't for me, and that's fine. Like, be done, because we're really good at it. Like, these two are really good at it. Like, please get out of the way, because it is tedious when we're working with people that don't know what they're doing. And James and Jason, I don't know, you guys have talked about new baby agents. Like, I don't know if you're recruiting your agents from other people or if you're raising someone up that's never been in real estate. But like, I think that's important too, to teach people, like, at what level do you attract these people, and then where do you get them from? Like, are you working with someone that's never been in sales, never been in real estate? Like, you're talking about these licensed showing assistants, like, where do you get them? Like, I think just understanding where's this pool of people. And obviously when you get to Jason, like, he's bringing over like teams of 50, right? Like, that's totally different. But like someone like James, where are you finding someone that you could have be your showing assistant?
It's a
Go ahead,
great,
answer, or I'll let you take the lead, but.
well, first of all, the great question is, what I created was called on demand. So that when you're out and you want to show these houses or whatever, you can actually go to on demand feature that we have as a brokerage, and we have 300 trained agents that can help, right? So we, as a brokerage model, I did that. As a team, you just helped out to help the team, right? So I would think with James, if he needed help, they're going to help him for the same support he's going to give them. So that was kind of the where I found the buyer as a team leader. I found it a lot easier. As a broker, it's more difficult because they don't really work for that team. But I created that on demand feature. As a team leader, one of the things I saw that team leaders did wrong when I was competing with other team leaders was they restricted the buyer agent and the seller agent. I disagree with that. If the client wants to sell a house or buy a house, that client should be able to work with that agent. I don't like when, and
it's ridiculous.
Taking that client away from that. It seems really
That's just so ignorant. Like, I think that is the most ignorant. Like, you go wherever you can sell a house, whether that's selling a house or helping someone buy a house. I've heard that stuff too from team leaders. Like, well, we only allowed them to do listings. Well, then I guess what? They're gonna leave.
I busted teams over that because they wouldn't restrict it. It's that sad. So anyway,
Jason
so I
and I
agree with
talk
that.
about this.
Point on
Yeah.
that.
Being able to do business where you want, how much you want, not being limited, even geography, if you want to drive an hour or two to do a sale, is empowerment. And that's what we're talking about. Opportunity, empowerment, supporting them to grow, and however they want to run their own individual business. That's the great part, as long as it's within the team's rules and guidelines and ethics. And, you know.
So what's interesting there, I'm going to go ahead, James. You have something else?
No, I was just saying, when you're limiting them to do other things, that's different. There are some teams that do listings and have like listing coordinator, but that's more of an admin role where they're putting up the listing photos, giving feedback, making sure there's flyers at the house. That's a little bit different. But as an agent, if you're not able to, as a team leader, raise them up and empower them to do whatever type of business they see fit, as long as it doesn't contradict your team philosophy or contradict.
Right. I agree. I'm going to use Jason's word, leverage. When you talk about a great listing agent anymore and you want to leverage your time, there are 5 points in a great listing agent, right? Which is the list the last. I mean, that's really the key to the business, right? Is you got to have a really good listing presentation and a really strong value prop, to everyone's point today. And you got to, it has to show value to the consumer. That's the number one. Then once you get the consumer on board, then you got to negotiate the contract. You got to negotiate the inspections. You got to be at the appraisals. You got to be at settlement. Everything else should be ultimately leveraged and done by someone else. And I think that's really the model that you're going to start seeing future forward in that way. Last points, James and Heather, and then I'm going to leave a couple minutes for Jason to kind of drop any last minute knowledge on us. James, nugget, team leader, what's your best advice for a team leader just getting started? If Heather was to go out in the field and be a team leader, what do you give advice to the new team leaders out there to do?
Keeping your agents accountable. I always say, I've yet to see an agent fail out of real estate, I do a lot of coaching. I've always seen them not succeed because they don't do the daily tasks it requires on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis to put themselves in a position to succeed. And as a team leader, if you can find the right agent, give them the framework and keep them on task and keep them accountable, they will succeed. If they don't succeed, it's because, not necessarily because again, they're not doing the day-to-day basics, like going to the gym. If you work out every day, you're going to be in good shape. If you're a realtor and you're out prospecting every day, learning, educating yourself, and treating this like a full-time job, you'll succeed. If you don't, those agents will blame it on everything else. And as a team leader, that's what they need, because most agents at these brokerages who just want to hire bodies leave you alone on an island. And most people aren't accustomed, like many on this call, to be self-starters and just go out like Jason and I did. We shared a desk and a sandwich every day because we couldn't afford both. And we were like, no matter what, we were going to make this work. And we had that discipline. Not all agents, in fact, we know that most don't. If you can keep that on task, you'll see them flourish and be indebted to you. And you'll watch them grow and feel like you're raising kids, and watching them succeed is a real reward.
Well said. Heather, drop it down. Tell us what makes the most incredible team member, teamerage person there is out there, and what give us a little feedback. If I'm sitting here going, man, I want to be like Heather when I grow up, what's the drop of knowledge?
You don't. I think you got to know why, like the why is what's going to keep you going when you're exhausted and when your eyes are burning and all you're functioning on is caffeine, and right, like when you've heard no 1,000 times, like the why has to be bigger than the obstacles, and you have to be completely comfortable with hearing no all the time until you figure out what you're good at and then operate in that strength, right? Like I think there comes a point when stop trying to make your weaknesses better and just make your strengths a lot stronger, and figure out what you're freaking really good at and do that all the time.
I love that. I'm going to cap that up, and then I'm going to turn to Jason. Is you have to know why you sell before you can learn how to sell. And I think that's a really good point, Heather. Been a pleasure. Jason, let's bring it home. I know you talked about a book. Let's talk about a couple of things. Thank you, Jason, for sponsoring also as well.
Yeah, for sure. So anyone on the call, if you scan this code if you scan that, you can get the actual book, of course, but if you scan that, it'll give you the audio. And basically, I think it's what, Aaron, eight different,
8 weeks.
It's 8 weeks. There's 5 segments. There's 8 segments and 5 modules in each segment. So we did it to where it's like 10 to 15 minute increments. And every day you work, or every week you work through one of the modules. And it really is about like getting into those next levels of your career and really detailed information on how to do so. And there's a lot of accountability stuff in here too. So it's we loved writing it. It took about a year and a half. It took a while, but it's legit. So check it out. And then for anyone interested in understanding the team concept and kind of what we're doing, Jared, you could type in joinjmg.com, but you can just go to joinjmg.com to learn more about what we got going on. But it's a great value proposition at JMG, and we're excited to be partners with RISMedia, and want to thank everybody for their attendance today.
Yes, certainly, guys. That was, wow. I mean, if you don't pick some nuggets out of that, I mean, even the panelists are writing down notes. I mean, there's no question I would run this again and again, and because I know it's recorded, listen to it. There's a lot of great knowledge. Knowledge is confidence, confidence is trust, trust is sale. And I'm going to tell you this: in the future, the real estate agent of the future, period, is going to have experience. You're going to have it. And you're going to have testimonials. I believe that people talking about you is more valuable than you talking about that yourself, right? I think that's why we're #1 in the nation with 5-star Zillow reviews. And I think you got to build trust around you. And the success of a 120 member team, #1 in the nations, it's because we trusted each other and we all got along. And that's hard to do because there's a lot of personalities in this business. There's a lot of ego in this business. There's a lot of that. And I think sometimes you got to let others rise and just be happy for them and grow with them. And I think that's going to be the key of what I see in the future about teams. I love watching teams like James grow. I love watching Heather, who's recreating new names like Teamerages, and and excited to be where she was and to be thankful where she was and to grow where you already are. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what you should do. Changing for change's sake makes no sense. There isn't anything better. There is no other grass. I've never, I've stayed where I was. I knew what I was going to do, and I just stayed focused on being the best I was. And if anybody ever, you look at yourselves and you go in the mirror, I call it accountability. It was me, and me that didn't make it, not anybody else around me. Who you surround yourself is important. Rising tides raise all ships. But at the end of the day, it comes down to you. If you're not doing what you want to do, it's you and no one else. And that's what really comes down to it. Other than that, guys, I'm ready. I'm ready to go out, sell down the houses, go rerun a team again. You guys are amazing. Thank you, guys. Have a greatest day ever. You're the best.
Thank you, everybody. Good luck. Have a successful rest of your year.
Yes. You guys as well. Pleasure.